So these stories happen, thank God. So again, we're going to learn Parsha of Yitro. Um, so actually, one of the things that I wanted to discuss, even though it doesn't apply to you now to such an extent, we all know that you have to honor our parents. That applies to us. We definitely have to honor them. Now, one day you're going to get married, so you're going to have another two parents at it. Your wife's parents, or for the girls, the husband's parents. How much do we have to respect them? That's pretty scary. If you think you're in trouble because you had to, whatever, honor your parents, now you have to honor your in laws too. Correct? And the reason is very simple why we have to honor them is that almost the same reason why we have to honor our parents. Is that one of the huge concepts in Judaism is that we have to have this attitude of gratitude. If somebody does good for us, we have to thank them. Correct? We actually learned that even from like the funniest things that you might think. I spoke about it a while ago. When Moshe Rabbeinu brought the plagues, so he's the leader of the Jews. So he brought all the plagues except the first three. We already discussed that before. He didn't turn the water into blood. He didn't hit the Nile for the frogs to come out. And also he didn't hit the dust to turn into lice. And Rashi brings the Medrash because Moshe actually had to show his gratitude. He couldn't bring a plague because he was saved through the Nile when his mother put him in a basket. So how could he make it into blood and kill all the fish in there? How could he not bring a plague of frogs? And when he killed that Egyptian, how was he able to hide him? He buried him under the ground. So we see even things that have no feelings, we have to show our gratitude. When it comes to our parents, they didn't do things, whatever, and not willingly. They actually did it willingly to raise us. And again, we all know our stories, when we were sick and we're not feeling well, sacrificing from their own comfort, sacrificing their own money. Saying obviously when a child needs something, usually parents get it for the child before they get it for themselves. So you have to show gratitude. That's what the Torah says. They raised you, you got to show them gratitude. To such an extent, what happens if somebody's parents are not such good parents? God forbid. Do we still have to respect them or not? So the Maimonides writes down, we cannot disrespect them. We got to respect them just for the fact that they brought us into the world. It could be that they abandoned the kid. They fathered the kid and they left. So I'm saying there's rules to it, but generally you cannot for sure disrespect them because they brought us into the world. Now the same thing is true regarding our spouses' parents. We get married to a wonderful spouse, God willing. She didn't just grow up, like a mushroom. Her parents or his parents actually raised him or they raised her. So if you have such a wonderful life, the great thanks goes to the parents that brought her or him into the world. So therefore we have to show actually gratitude and be respectful to them too. Why did I discuss this? Because actually we learned in this week's parsha. In this week's parsha, when Moshe was by Mount Sinai, his wife and his two kids were not there in the beginning. Why? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Egypt, he did not bring in his wife and his two kids. Because his brother Aaron said, according to Rashi, we are suffering in Egypt. Why do you want to bring more people to see the suffering of the Jews or to suffer with them in Egypt? So send them back. So Moshe Rabbeinu sent them back to Midian. Right? So all the Jews are leaving Egypt, but his wife and his two kids are not there. So now his wife and his two kids live with Yitro or Jethro, who's the father-in-law. Now they start traveling to come to Mount Sinai. All right? So now Yitro comes and he sends a message to Moshe, hey Moshe, I'm here, I want to come to the Jewish camp. Now we all know that Moshe had two choices. He's a king. He could either send somebody to bring Yitro into the Jewish camp, or he's going to walk out of the Jewish camp to meet Yitro, his father-in-law. Right? As a king, it would make sense, just send somebody to bring my father-in-law in. But actually the Torah says, Vayetze Moshe likrat chutno. Moshe walked out of the Jewish camp and he went to meet his father-in-law. Now why did he do that? He was a king. Why did he forego, or disrespect his own honor? He was a king. So the basic answer that they give is, imagine was his father coming to meet him. Just because you're a king doesn't mean that you don't have to respect your father. He would go out to meet his father too. So the father-in-law had to give the same respect. Clear? You also find another, you're learning about when you get married, you have to honor your parents-in-law. All right? Because of gratitude. If you have a wonderful wife, somebody raised her, I mean, of course, right? So if you put that on your resume, not only your wife is going to love you, but your in-laws will love you too, because you respect. Anyways, so another thing also we find is when Moshe goes and brings his father-in-law into the Jewish camp, it says later on they brought sacrifices, they were eating meat. Actually, Moshe was standing and serving food. Because the Torah says when they brought the sacrifices, it says Aaron came, v'chol ziknei Israel, and all the elders, lecho lechem, to eat food. But it doesn't say Moshe's name. Because Moshe never sat down, he was actually serving them, including his father-in-law. We also find that King David used to call his father-in-law father. We're just saying when you get married, you got to honor another set of couples. Besides your own parents, your in-laws too. That was one thing that I wanted to discuss with you. The importance of, actually honoring our in-laws. Another thing that I'm going to discuss actually, this shows the greatness, the high level that you guys can reach, being in the secular world. You see, the Torah here says, when Moshe brought Yitro into the Jewish camp, he wanted to encourage him to become a Jew. So it says he told him all the miracles that happened, everything. So Yitro here is the great kindness that God does to the Jews, how beloved the Jews are. He decides to become a Jew. So look what he says. Vayomer Yitro. Yitro says, Baruch Hashem, blessed be God, Asher hitzil etchem miyad Mitzrayim u'miyad Paro, who saved you from the hands of Egyptians, and from the hand of Pharaoh, Asher hitzil etam mitached yad Mitzrayim, that he saved you or separated you from under the slavery of Egypt. He said the word Baruch Hashem. Right? You find actually in the Torah twice, Baruch Hashem, that was said by non-Jews. One is by Lavan, the future father-in-law of Yaakov, and one time here that Yitro says Baruch Hashem. That's before he became a Jew. So there is actually a Zohar which is very, very interesting. The Zohar says God was not ready to give the Torah until Yitro came and he said Baruch Hashem, thank God. Once Jethro, father-in-law of Moshe, came and he said thank God, then the Torah was given. Do you hear that, guys? All the Jews left Egypt, no Torah for them. God is not ready to give the Torah. When is God ready to give the Torah to the Jews? When Yitro comes and he says Baruch Hashem. What's so great about the Baruch Hashem of Yitro? And actually the Zohar says that nobody said Baruch Hashem once they left Egypt until Yitro came and he said Baruch Hashem. Correct? Now guys, I want to ask you a question. What did the Jews do as soon as they crossed the Red Sea or before they crossed the Red Sea? We said every day in our davening, in our prayers. But the Jews sang, crossing the Red Sea. Oz Yashir Moshe Ubnei Israel, right? It says Moshe Rabbeinu and all the Jews praised God. Now, they didn't say exactly Baruch Hashem, but they praised God too. So why is the Zohar saying that nobody thanked God? Nobody said Baruch Hashem when they left Egypt until Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, came, and then God was convinced to give the Torah. The Jews said a whole song. Yitro only said one verse, Baruch Hashem. Thank God that He saved you. But the Jews said the entire Oz Yashir. Why is their thanking not as important to deserve the Torah until Yitro comes and he says Baruch Hashem? So we're going to discuss something very great, by the way. Guys, the purpose of the Torah was given, is not only for us to become better people, but actually the Torah was given that we should make the world a better world. It's this dark world can't be darker than this. Right? When some people say Hamas is right, nothing is normal anymore, right? It's a very, very dark world. And then when God gave us the tools, the Torah mitzvot, through using the world for the sake of God, we actually bring godliness within the world. We discussed this many times, right? When your mouth has a chance to say something evil, but you use it to say words of Torah, you sanctify your mouth. When you buy a house, you put a mezuzah on the door, you sanctify your door. Seriously, your entire house, not just your door. When you buy tefillin, tefillin is made from the skin of a cow. Instead of using it, whatever, just to make shoes, So they use it to make a sefer Torah, to make tefillin. You actually elevate the whole animal kingdom. When a Jew eats food and he makes a blessing on that, he's actually elevating that food. So the purpose of the Torah is not only for me to get knowledge and to be a better person, of course, He does that, but the purpose is also to make the world a better world. That's the purpose of Torah. It's like a light in the darkest place of the world. That's what the Torah was given to us as human beings. God did not give the Torah to the angels because they don't live in dark places. Angels realize who God is, what God is. They have no, evil inclination like us. So God gave the Torah to human beings like us that we have our temptations. We have the desire to sin. We have that. But nevertheless, we control ourselves and we use the Torah to elevate the world to a much higher level. Correct? Now you tell me who was in a lower level, the Jews or Yitro? The Jews in Egypt believed in God at least, most of them. Yitro was a man that served every idol in the world. How do we know that? There's a hint in the Torah, because Yitro tells Moshe, Ato yodaiti, now I know ki gadol Hashem mikol Elokim, that God is bigger than all the other powers. It says from all the other powers. How did you know who all the other powers are? If he just worshipped one idol, he knew that this God is bigger than his idol. How does he know it's bigger than all the idols, all the powers in the world? So from here, Rashi proves that he actually was looking for the truth. So he did one idol worship and he wasn't happy with it. He went to the next one, he went to the next one. Finally, when he saw all the miracles that happened to the Jews leaving Egypt, he believed that God is the greatest. Could you believe what a low level he was into? As you know, idol worship is one of the worst sins, cut off from God completely. Somebody doesn't keep kosher, believes in God, at least he believes in God. Somebody that worships idols doesn't believe in the true God. So he's completely in impurity. And he served every idol in the world. You could imagine how impure he was. Now he comes and says, wow, I believe in God. Isn't that the lowest part of the world was elevated? Right? The Jews were not in such a low state. They had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whatever they taught them the Torah before. So again, the purpose of Torah is to go to the lowest level of the world and elevate it. And that's and we needed such a preparation before the giving of the Torah. Yitro accomplished it. A man that actually tasted every idol worship, and then he came to realize what God is, who God is, and he comes to serve God. He actually did do the purpose of Torah. The darkest place is elevated to the highest place. That's what the Torah was given on his merit, according to the Zohar, at least. Now, what do we learn from these people? You see, I'm in a dark world, but not in the darkest world. At least I think so. I'm in a synagogue most of the time. When I go to high schools, public schools, colleges, I'm not sitting in a class seeing all the garbage that's going on, right? And I don't have temptations like you, because I'm married. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. I don't need to be attracted to a woman or something. So that's the lucky part. When my mind started wandering, they gave me a wife, so that was it. I got married at 24, dated at 23. So I was lucky, thank God. You guys are in the darkest part of the world. Not only that, when I was in yeshiva, there was no girls to, attract us. They taught us to talk to a girl is a sin. Seriously. Even if you wanted to do something wrong, we couldn't. There was no cell phones those days. So what could you do? Remember, I told you many times, the youngest lady in our school was our secretary, 60 years old. We had no temptations. So we're not really in that dark side of the world. You guys are in the darkest side of the world. I have gone to high schools. I see what happens under the steps, behind the trees. Right? I've seen it. Unfortunately. There was one time a guy in class, Rabbi, what, you're weird or something? We do 3 times a day behind the bushes. A kid in college told me. So you guys are in the darkest place, and we have a choice. Am I going to bring godliness there? I'm going to keep myself strong. And if I see another person that's going wrong way, I'm going to, whatever, in a good language, bring him closer. Or do I go into the darkness? See, if you guys actually elevate the darkness, you are the Yitro of this generation. Not that, God forbid, you worship idols. No. You're open to the darkest things in the world. College campuses, high schools, right? And at the same time, you keep strong. You're the Yitro. You bring light in the most dark place. So you should be proud of yourselves for doing it. And I say many times, if God put you in a college, you're not just there to get your knowledge but actually God puts you there because there's another Jew that knows less than you. And by you meeting him, God wanted you to meet him. And when that happens, you bring him closer. You're the Yitro of the generation. There was one of the guys here, he prays by us. And he says, Rabbi, I was in college campus. The mother came and told me. I saw this girl, Jewish girl. She says, I really don't care who I get married to. I don't have to marry a Jew. I mean, thank God he's open, doesn't hide it. So I told the guy, what do you want to do about it? He says, I don't know, maybe I should keep away. So I said, no, why do you keep it? If that's what she says and you heard it, just bring him to the synagogue to have some food on Shabbat. Tell him not to come for prayers. Tell him to come just have some orange chicken. Believe me, when he hangs around some Jewish guys, maybe he'll get interested to marry a Jewish guy. Maybe he'll see the difference, or at least he has a chance to marry a Jewish guy. So if you saw that girl, because God wanted you to see that girl, why would she come and tell you, I'm going to marry anybody that I want? I don't care if I marry a Jewish person. There's a purpose that God brought it to you. So you guys see such people in colleges, bring them in. We should see you in the synagogue more often with your friend. Or in the singles parties, the Jewish parties. So that was the second thing that I wanted to discuss with you. How great was, Yitro. Another thing that actually made God give us the Torah besides what Yitro did. There's something very interesting in this week's parasha. It says when the Jews came in front of Mount Sinai, it says Vayisu Merfidim. There was a place called Refidim. They traveled from there. V'yavo midbar Sinai. They came to the desert of Sinai. V'yachanu b'midbar. They encamped in the desert. Right, 600,000 men, at least 2 million people there. They're all putting their tents. Then it says Vayichan Sham Yisrael. Yisrael encamped there, singular. It says before that they came, Vayachanu, they encamped. But then it says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Yisrael, encamped there. It says in singular. If you're talking about 2 million people, why do you mention singular only? So Rashi says, because the Jews became like one, just like one person that has one heart, they became like one, meaning they stopped fighting. Up to Mount Sinai, they were constantly fighting and arguing. That's a Jewish thing, right? They say a lot of things about Jews. Jews don't only complain when things are bad. It's bad if they don't complain. You get that? We used to be Jews, you have to complain. So we always argue, no, God forbid, I'm just kidding. Jews always argued, at least then. When they came to Mount Sinai, they stopped arguing. They became like one person. No more fighting. They became like one. So it says God said, I want to give the Torah to the Jews, but I see them fighting. I don't want to give my most precious things to people that are constantly fighting. So when the Jews got along, he gave them the Torah. From here we learn that unity is the greatest blessing for the Jews. If you want to have many, many blessings, honestly, the greatest thing that brings blessings, number one, is unity. We're not talking about being religious or not being religious. The fact that we're united, that's the greatest thing. And that's why God didn't want to give the Torah until Vayichan. It says they're all encamped like one person. And the truth is, thank God we see it. At least, during times of trouble, the Jews are all united. Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You're religious, not religious. When there's trouble, we're all one. Unlike many other nations that are not like that. So we learned the greatness of unity actually over here. There was a couple more things that I wanted to discuss with you. If you have another 5 or 10 minutes. I just wanted to discuss one thing with you guys. What happened when God gave us the Torah? So let's discuss that. What's the difference after the Torah was given than before the Torah was given? What I want to discuss with you is that, we have a tradition that our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they kept the whole Torah before it was given. We do find that God taught the Torah to certain people. First example, Noah. He knew the difference of a kosher and non-kosher animal, right? God told him the kosher animals take 7 in the ark. Non-kosher take only 2. How did Noah know what's the difference of kosher and non-kosher? He wasn't Jewish. So Rashi says God taught it to him. Right? So now Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they knew the whole Torah before it was given. They actually kept it. So now the question that the Hasidic philosophy asks, so what was the new thing about the fact that God gave us the Torah? was nothing new. It was kept before. So you might come and say, you know what? Okay, God gave it. Before He gave it, it wasn't an obligation. After He gave it, we are obligated to keep it. But why this whole big noise? Thunder, lightning, fire. Usually do these things. It's like something new coming to the world. There was nothing new. So why this huge, thunder by the giving of the Torah? So here Chassidus explains that the difference is before the Torah was given, there was a big boundary between spirituality and the physical world. Just like you can't take your intellect and put it in a cup. It's impossible. You can't take something which is not tangible, spiritual, put it in a physical world. So before the Torah was given, as much as people did good deeds, but godliness did not permeate the world. They revealed more godliness in the spiritual world, but the world didn't really change. Because human being didn't have the power to bring godliness to permeate the world, to become a godly world. Because we were limited. But once God gave the Torah, God has no limits. God could do the impossible. So when He came on Mount Sinai, He actually brought His godliness on the earth. And the Midrash actually brings a very interesting explanation for that. It says, people of Rome could not go to Syria, I guess Syria is Syria, before the Torah was given. But after the Torah was given, it's as if people from Rome could go to Syria and from Syria to Rome. Sounds like a very funny story. But Kabbalistic books explain Rome comes from the word Ram. Ram means high. It's referring to God, spirituality. Surya, Sur means something which is removed from godliness. So when he said Rome couldn't go into Syria, means spiritual things could not permeate the physical world. And the physical world couldn't be elevated to the spiritual worlds. But once God gave the Torah, it was possible for it to happen. And afterwards, He gave us the power. When we do mitzvot, we change the physical world. When your hand puts on tefillin, is not the same hand that never put on tefillin. Your tongue, when you study Torah, is a different tongue. You change. You're not the same person. Seriously, the world changes. What happens if, God forbid, a Sefer Torah falls down in front of us? We got to fast. Well, if it's not a holy object, why do you fast? If this thing falls down, I don't have to fast. I pick it up. Because obviously, this is not permeated with the same holiness as a Sefer Torah, which was written by a person with good intentions. So we see that after the Torah was given, you have such power. You take something which is totally mundane, totally unholy, and you transform it to godliness. Could you believe that? This is the novelty after giving of the Torah. So this answers our question. If our fathers kept the Torah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, why did God make such a big tumult of giving us the Torah? What's the big deal? It's nothing new. It is something new. What they kept before did not permeate the world. Whatever we keep now goes through the world and actually elevates it. You bring godliness into this world. When your mind studies the Torah, your brains become a holy thing. They become a dwelling place for godliness. Could you imagine? We don't know that. We never learned that. You guys have studied. You know what I'm saying? They tell us you study Torah, become a good person, yeah, you act, so you get the world in the world to come. It's not a matter of getting a reward. You're actually changing, transforming the world to something that God desired to have. And we're really lucky, all of us, that we are, partners with God. And He gave us this power that your little act, no matter how little it is in your eyes, in our eyes, could change the world completely. You bring godliness, the infinite God, into the world by doing a mitzvah. That's the greatness of keeping the Torah after the Torah was given. I just wanted to finish off with one small thing. When you look at the Ten Commandments, I think it's absolutely very true. If you look at the Ten Commandments, it's very, very funny the way it's set up. The first 5 on the first tablets are majorly things between us and God, right? There's one God, believe in one God, I'm your God, whatever. Number 2, don't believe in any idols. Number 3, don't say God's name in vain. Number 4, keep the day of Shabbat. Number 5, honor your parents. Even though that's between us and our parents, but the Gemara says honoring parents is like honoring God. Why? Because in the creation of a child, there are 3 partners, There's the father, the mother, and God puts the soul. So if you respect one of the partners, it's like respecting all three. So honoring parents is like honoring God. On the second tablet, what do we have? Don't kill, right? Do not commit adultery, no kidnapping, no stealing, right? Then it says, do not give false testimony and don't covet or don't desire what your friend has. So the second ones talk about commandments between us and other people. Why did God put these two things together? Besides that, the first four are okay, great things. One God, no idol worship, keep Sabbath, you know what I'm saying? Whatever, don't say God's name in vain. These were new stuff because nobody before that kept it as a nation. We were the first nation that believed in God. But what is this whole lightning and thing, don't steal? Is that something new? Any stupid guy knows that stealing is not good. You don't have to be intelligent, you know. What do you call that? Rock scientist? I forgot the word.
Rocket scientist.
Rocket scientist or Persian, sorry. Or don't commit adultery. You have to hear it from God not to commit adultery. No one person knows. You get married, you're faithful to each other. Don't be jealous of somebody else's things. Now, everybody knows jealousy is a bad thing. So, one of the answers that they give is the reason why God put these two things together to tell us don't steal because God said so. Don't commit adultery because God said so, not because you understand it's wrong. Right? You talk to average guy, why? I'm that stupid, I need God's commandment, understanding myself. But the truth is, if somebody doesn't believe in God, no matter how smart he is, he could bring the worst atrocities in the world if he doesn't believe in God. The biggest proof are the Germans, the Nazis. You know, at that time, the most advanced country was Germany. Anybody wanted to become a doctor? Universities in Berlin. Engineer? Berlin. To such an extent that the Jews in Germany, the Reform Jews, they were actually embarrassed that they're Jewish. They would say, keep your Judaism at home and be a regular man outside because they felt the Torah is such an old fashioned thing with the science and things that Germans have. They were embarrassed to show that they're Jewish. So they said, be a Jew at home, but be a regular guy outside. There were certain Jews that said, we don't need Jerusalem anymore. Berlin is our New Jerusalem because they're such good people. When you ask the guy in Germany, how do I get to that address? They would say, you know, you go to that address like that. Don't you think so? They would add these words. Isn't that true? Why? They wanted like respect you, ask your opinion too. Now, what did these sophisticated people do when World War II started? They started killing, butchering people. You know, this Dr. Mengele, one time he came home, I think I said this story once, and he found out that his dog was ran over by a car. He cried. How could somebody so cruel and careless to kill a little dog that doesn't hurt anyone? I think it was a Chihuahua, like a small dog. What did he do the next day when he went to his office in the concentration camps? He would kill the Jews. He would take a pregnant woman, take the fetus out, or take the fat out. Just same thing that Hamas did, you know, to a pregnant lady. October 7th. Just, you know, and they have them in the museums, you know, the soaps that they made from the fat of the Jewish bodies. So, what did this knowledge teach them? Just to be skilled. Skilled in what? We have to wait and see. But the ones that actually did believe in God, there were people that saved the Jews during the Holocaust. So that's what the Torah says. You really want to be a moral person, you have to believe in God. Because a person is so biased to his desires that even if he's the most sophisticated person, the most intelligent person, he only becomes skilled, he becomes knowledgeable. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be a good person. So that's what the Torah says. I'm your God. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. You believe in me, don't steal. Honestly, people that believed in God, they saved them. There was like a couple of people that interviewed them. Why did you save the Jews during the Holocaust? He said, I was thinking, how will I face my God after 120 years if I'm actually helping the Nazis to kill the Jews? He said God's name. That's what the Torah is teaching us. You want to be a moral person, you got to believe in God. Otherwise, God knows what's going to happen. Everybody, thank you for listening.